listeners, we're all relatively well read on this podcast. This is the problem with the death of the author theory, is that sometimes you really, really got to think about the author.
Spoiler alert, audience, if the author inspires Hitler, you should maybe think, just for a minute.
Welcome to Bible Boys, a podcast where two ex-evangelical siblings and an ex-Catholic non-sibling watch Christian media and either praise or condemn it. I'm Aaron.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Michael.
This week, hold on to your kettles as we talk about the eugenicist roots of Sleepytime Tea. Before we just describe the stupidest racist cult ever, please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, like and comment on our video, and follow us on Twitter at The Bible Boys. Michael, this was your idea. This is going to be kind of an experimental episode because you have knowledge that me and Joshua don't. So what's the game plan here?
So I love this because this makes it seem like the cult's going to be about how I'm a higher being and I'm going to get you two to ascend. None of that has to do with this particular cult. So I was inspired by a YouTuber who I am obsessed with, Illuminati, and she did an episode about celestial seasonings and the cult behind it, because she does this great show where she talks about corporate takedowns and all of that. Very interesting. And I was like, excuse me, the cult behind what? So Sleepytime Tea, the one that we've all had with that friendly little bear on it?
I finished a cup of that this morning.
How could you look that bear in the eyes after you know that he's not a blue man?
So yeah, that tea, our wonderful audience, is inspired by a not quite a cult, but kind of.
They are a cult in a way. OCCULT, I feel.
Yes.
To me, it's kind of like how the people that sell the little sea monkey kits aren't technically selling, ways to imprison animals. They're just giving you the seeds to start it yourself. If you want to start a cult, here's the startup material.
This does feel a little like cults for dummies. Just in case you were looking at making one, this Urantia seems like one. And so we'll get into that, but that inspired me to say, okay, let me do some research on my own and see what I can find. And then, as I mentioned when we were chatting before we hopped on, it's the book that this cult is based off of. And I'm going to be calling it a cult because it's not an organized religion. And calling it a sect of Christianity is just a stretch. More so of a stretch than a cult.
It's Christianity in the same way that, Ancient Aliens is Christianity. Where they're the wheel angels with covered in eyes is UFO. So, Jesus was an alien. Alright, yeah, cool, Christianity.
And the best part is that is not far off base from what we're going to be talking about. So Aaron is going to walk us through Illuminati's video. And so Aaron, what did you think about the structure of that? And obviously that video has more to do with Celestial Seasonings, the company, than we're going to focus on here.
I mean, it's definitely something that I am ashamed to have on my YouTube history. I Googled some stuff at work that I had to immediately delete from my history because, there's a lot of complicated and challenging ideas. So, Illuminati introduces us to Mo Siegel, who is the founder of the Celestial Seasonings company. And she goes on to explain that he is just really into the Urantia book, which, is a book that basically just says that the world, or not the world, the universe, on every planet with life, there are 6 colored races. The green, red, orange, yellow, blue, and indigo, like the rainbow. And at that point in the video, I was like, it's going to be one of these. then it just got more fucked up from there, because then we learned that the indigo people are at the bottom of the racial hierarchy. The blue subdues the indigo. We also learned that the green and orange men can be giants, which is fun. The Christian roots...
Evident by me and Michael being 7.5 feet tall.
Yes, of course.
Our green last names really supporting us here.
The Christian roots of this are that Adam and Eve are aliens, and they basically, an Adam and an Eve will show up on every planet and colonize it, and more or less do eugenics to it to make sure that the quote is the book has this quote that says, here's the thing about eugenics. Quote, mankind loses as much progress as it makes by ignoring eugenics. And Adam and Eve are the people who are supposed to basically call down all of the undesirable races, so that way, only the good ones are left. And on Earth, they fucked it up, and now Urantia is trying to get back in there. We're going to talk into more detail about the most just wild shit that happens in here, but probably my favorite part was the quote from Mo Siegel when he's talking about when he discovered the Urantia book, which is I was not concerned with who had written it or how it had been written because it was so powerful. And
I just like big quotes. I just like good quotes. I don't care if I'm quoting Mussolini. I just like quotes.
Listeners, we're all relatively well read on this podcast. This is the problem with the death of the author theory, is that sometimes you really, really got to think about the author.
Spoiler alert, audience, if the author inspires Hitler, you should maybe think, just for a minute.
Which is, that's a good point. Hey, Mo. Hey, Mr. Siegel, did you read this thing? Illuminati breaks down all the emails, like when somebody, calls them out, the Urantia Foundation will be like, oh, well, you need to read the book a couple more times before the notes really start to hit you right. And it's just like, shut the fuck up, y'all. It's the worst.
I hate when people talk about books the same way they do, like, bad older music. It's like, oh no, you just gotta listen to like that one Beatles song 98 times, and then suddenly it's great. It's not. If you have to do it 87 times, it's not a good. You've just become complacent at that point. I have been given the good task. If we're happy with that little description of the fun video that we watched of bringing up a fun, good man who is also just a big ol' fan of this work. And that's John Harvey Kellogg. And if you're like, wait a fucking second, does he have anything to do with the cornflakes? He does! So, John Harvey Kellogg cared so much about the good feeling that sex gives that it bugged him so bad. He hated that sex made people happy. He hated that sex was a thing that people were doing. And he just needed it to stop. So he was like, how do I get people to stop masturbating? I'll have them eat cornflakes. And then people were like, these cornflakes are good, but boy, do I still love masturbating. He's like, well, then we gotta do something else here. What if we circumcise people? And he was like, you know what? Let's figure this out. I'm 37. Let's take off the tip. So he circumcised himself at 37. And was like, do I still like sex? He was like, this isn't good enough. We also need to pour acid onto young women's clitoris. I'm very happy that practice has not continued. This dude was insane. He wrote a lot about the warfare with passion. Because he thought that even sex in marriage was like a dirty thing because you enjoyed it too much. So on his honeymoon, him and his new bride, instead of, having the fun sex vacation that a honeymoon is supposed to be, wrote 140 pages on why sex was bad. And I've never had a honeymoon before, and I do think that they can come in many different ways. Like, a nice writing retreat does sound fun, but if it's on why sex isn't good, I don't know, y'all. Maybe see other people.
Ironically, on my honeymoon, me and Sierra just ate cornflakes all the time.
and slept in 2 different twin beds, separated.
We did get a yogurt enema once, but that's a different story.
That's a story for another podcast.
That's our Patreon exclusive.
It was going to go on OnlyFans, but
R.I.P. So I'm glad that you two got to share this as well, because Kellogg is not just some guy that likes these ideas. He
loves them.
So his niece is none other than Sadler, William S. Sadler's wife.
That's
And
right.
William Sadler is the guy who wrote the book. We talked about Mo, but William Sadler is the author of the Urantia book.
Allegedly.
Well,
Allegedly.
Don't get ahead of yourself, Mr. Man.
Sorry, I forgot.
It
Of course.
materialized.
There's a caveat.
yes. So, okay, let's talk about Sadler here. So, William S. Sadler is the closest thing to an author we know about the Urantia book. And it's because he says, no, I haven't written it. And believers of this organization believe that this was literally sent by aliens. So how could it have a human writer?
Isn't it like aliens dash angels?
Yes. Which, funny enough, wasn't this the theory postulated in that comic we read?
No, that suggested they were demons. Aliens are demons because they're trying to prove that science is real, and science would disprove God.
And so, if demons are fallen angels, then one could just get to the place of...
All right, Mr. Lawyer over here, if it don't fit, we must acquit. Like, yeah, technically.
I think it's very funny that you just made an O.J. Simpson reference, despite the fact that you're the youngest person. Despite the fact that you are in Generation Z and are the youngest person on this podcast.
I'm glad I brought up this timely reference that we've just kind of kept going with.
So let's talk a little bit about William S. Sadler, the purported author, likely editor, and kind of de facto leader of this foundation during his life. So he actually worked for William Kellogg first while he was going to school, and he was going to... he attended the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, where he trained to be an evangelist and became an ordained minister.
So ready for you to say, like, Harvard or Yale. Because back then, if you wanted to get into Harvard or Yale, you had to have, like, $8 and be white.
Oh, no, but he did follow it up by going to med school and got his doctor of medicine and started practicing. So his wife was a nurse, he was a doctor. You know, evangelical doctor. Like, that feels very important. Like, that's a big career move to be like, I'm gonna go be a preacher. Just kidding, now a doctor.
Yeah, I don't... This might just be the now times that we're living in. I feel like a doctor needs to express that up front if they're evangelical before they give me advice.
Well, here's the thing. Sadler was not really interested in talking to patients so much. He was mostly focused on surgery and then started practicing psychiatric counseling.
Real quick, I want to bring up the person who taught him psychiatry.
Yes.
Who is none other than Sigmund Freud, because this is a fucking crossover episode,
Yeah.
and every terrible famous person you've heard of is in it.
Yeah, if someone was bad during this era, Sadler was like buddy-buddy with him.
That's really funny. But this was also the time when, like, if you were a doctor in one field, you could do anything.
Yes.
Like, you're like, I went to school, like, to work on, like, surgery on the feet, therefore... I'm going to pull this fucking nail out of your head because I'm a doctor. And everyone was just like, yeah, I mean, that does make sense.
Well, and that's actually so interesting and gets us into the next step with Sadler. So, according to the origin story of the Urantia book, again, like, I think it's important to note that this is according to their own origin story. They are writing this narrative, so they have something that they are trying to push. And I think that should be importantly noted here because, you know, in between 1906 and 1911, I love that we don't have a clear time on when this happens because this feels pretty vague. In between 1906 and 1911, a neighbor, a friend, somebody consulted Sadler and like came to him and his wife and they were like, hey, my husband is sleeping really weird and breathing really weird in his sleep and moving around and talking. And like, today we would just be like, you have sleep apnea. I don't think we would really like call a neighbor or friend who's a doctor. We'd be like, oh, you have sleep apnea. Let's like get this checked out. But, you know, this was a century ago and they didn't have that. So Sadler did a lot of observations and interviews and was trying to figure out, is this mental illness? And he came to the medically arrived at conclusion that this was none other than aliens.
Yeah, listen, we all love the program House MD, and we know that sometimes when Dr. House is like, okay, well, have we checked for lupus? No. Have we checked for an autoimmune disorder? No. It's aliens. Shit. It's pretty standard medical practice.
Well, and I think this is an interesting point to kind of cast a little bit of doubt here. Sadler and his wife actually spent a lot of time debunking mediums in the era.
Which, like, everyone big, like Houdini was really big on, like, making sure that mediums were, like, debunked and everything. And I do think that in a different life where I was a little bit more intelligently inclined, that's what I would have been doing back then. Which is just going around to people being like, and here's a ghost, and me being like, no, there's not. It's not a ghost.
Very much like epic Christian gets pwned by radical atheist, except for the 1800s.
that was the equivalent.
Well, and I find that so fascinating, right? Because it's just a reminder that no one is purely a logical person. And so Sadler believes this, but doesn't really do very much with it in the beginning. And the Urantia book...
What are you gonna do? You discover that a dude's possessed by aliens. What's step 2? I'm sitting on that for a minute.
No, I am 100% writing a tell-all book. I am going on the news circuits. I am milking this for everything it's worth.
Michael,
because even if people don't believe me...
Even if that person who got possessed is your brother-in-law?
Yeah.
100%. That's what Illuminati said, is that this guy that was allegedly talking about weird aliens in their sleep was likely Wilfred Kellogg, who is, of course, John Harvey Kellogg's, I guess, son-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
Which, Michael, how many of your problems have the, like, solution with this weird fucking flow chart that leads to tell-all book?
It's, you know, I've never seen a problem that I couldn't sell a story to. That's really the inspirational thing of it all. I think this would make a hell of a story. I would have ran right to it. I would not have sat on it and then just casually told my Sunday Bible study about it.
You know who does
because
this?
That's what Sadler did.
This is a Brian Greene move if I've ever heard one. This is a Brian Lee Greene, father to Joshua and Michael Greene, where he just finds the most buck wild thing that's ever happened to him and then just drops it one Sunday school like, yeah. Once I
feel
had
like
to
you
kill a
are
ghost.
getting so close to doxing him with this description.
Yeah.
No, you're not wrong. I mean, many of the people who came actually were in the medical field and they were kind of progressive and they actually would discuss the sleep issues. And I find that really interesting that that's kind of what sparked some of this, is that they were all just like talking about the sleep issues. And then before you know it, your friend who's holding your Sunday studies where you talk about religion and medical procedures goes, hey, remember that patient I have that wasn't sleeping and like breathing weird in his sleep? It was aliens.
So please turn to Romans 12:12.
Anyway.
this is why the Sunday Bible School, the like casual group, actually had a like secrecy clause in order to join it. So you weren't allowed to talk about any of this.
Never join anything with a secret clause. Never.
Well, and it's sometime in this time, Urantia's really not interested in like nailing down anything beyond a decade. That this book just appeared to the group. And we know that it was done by 1935. But more likely, and the reason that Sadler gets away with saying, I didn't write this group came together and wrote this. Did they believe it? Did they not? Who knows? But it's very clear that the Sunday school wrote this.
Collaborative storytelling. You just gotta love it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Listen, critique groups are so important for young writers, and I think that it's just so nice to see that a group of aspiring creatives can come together and make, a manifesto that inspired one of the 20th century's greatest murderers.
Just a ton of white racists sitting around in a group and going, maybe it was aliens.
You know what's the best part? They called themselves the Forum.
Fucking, of course they did, because everybody loves to be like, oh, we're smart people. Let's go to either Greece or Rome, and then ignore all of the scientific or social progress those communities made.
I just love it because it's basically like a bunch of Reddit bros getting together and being like, let's talk about aliens, and then publish a book about it.
Mm-hmm. Very much name your new subreddit like the Athenaeum or some bullshit.
Yeah.
God, we could get this going.
Don't. There's already a million different Discord channels with pretentious names out there.
For real. And the book wasn't completed until 1935, but it really wasn't published until the 50s. So the Urantia Foundation was founded in 1950 as a tax-exempt, quote, educational society.
Can you imagine sitting on this story through 2 world wars and going like, we're not ready. We're not ready. And then like, we're like knee deep in Korea and you're like, this is when we strike.
That's a good question though. Like if Hitler was inspired, was the Urantia book out at this time? Like what is the timeline between Urantia book being public knowledge and then the founding of the Urantia Foundation?
So the thing is that it really wasn't publicly available until after the Forum actually disbanded. And so they disbanded in 1942. But where the inspiration comes from is actually almost separate from Urantia, which is fascinating in a deep way, but I think is important connective tissue here. The Hitler inspiration here is Sadler's earlier work about eugenics.
I see. Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Alongside his time with Urantia, he was obsessed with writing about race.
Hitler was like the dudes that are on Twitter that are like, I like that old Kanye stuff. Like, he was into like Sadler's OG works.
Well, and Sadler was publishing things in like the 10s and 20s that early. So that just like gives you an idea of everyone in his forum knew exactly what views he had because they were published.
And anytime that 4 or 5 white racists in a room started talking about magic, Hitler appeared. He was kind of like Candyman. Like, if you just said, like, white racism magic, they just, like, he would appear in the background and start taking notes.
Well, and I think some of Sadler's views here actually end up tying together with what Urantia becomes about, and then they try to deny. So he believed that some races were at a lower stage of evolution, and that made certain races more prone to aggression, alcoholism. Quote, feeble-mindedness, insanity, and delinquency were hereditary traits. And that basically you had to breed out those sorts of traits, which is not, I mean, it's literally just eugenics, right? Like, he's just describing a textbook definition. And those were the same ideas that later, obviously, Hitler would take on. And it's wild to me that this man is publishing this and was at this same time publishing these books, writing Urantia, and meeting people, well, hanging out with people like Kellogg, who are inspiring a lot of these views because Kellogg viewed the same thing, and then hanging out with Harry Houdini, busting up fake mediums. Literally, the man you just mentioned, guess what? They were hanging out.
Listen, think of a person that existed a long time ago. Fucking Babe Ruth is going to make an appearance. I just fucking know it. I just know it. But also, like, you point out, like, it's weird that he was kind of, like, had one foot into science, and then the rest of his entire body, deep in pseudoscience, revolved around race. That was what the time period was about. Like, Hitler got his ideas from United States professors that were like, what if we science-tized racism? What if we can prove that, like, Darwin and race have a connection? And it's, of course, like, I think it goes without saying, all wrong and bad and incorrect. But it was, like, a lot of quote-unquote smart people were walking around with these ideas, just kind of doing a circle jerk of, like, yes, 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 very good, 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 yes, chap, excellent work. That's what I imagine happens in a circle jerk.
You'd have to ask the forum members.
I've never had I wasn't in a frat in college, so I'm not 100% sure. That's not a dig on you, Aaron. That's a dig on...
No comment.
I forgot you were in a frat.
I was sworn to secrecy, so...
Much like the forum.
Much like the forum.
Aaron's over here like, fuck, was that my frat?
How did they know?
Well, the forum did publicly disband in 1942. And, you know, what I find interesting about Sadler more is that he did take on a lot of the medical racism of the time, but also was in this, like, professional skeptic while writing a book that is textually inspired by Christianity and larger Seventh-day Adventism. And that is what I find so fascinating, is this man was like, okay, Seventh-day Adventism is almost right, but the thing that they've got wrong is aliens. Also, aliens prove all of my racism. It's like, okay?
And I don't want to be like, there are, I'm sure, a lot of kind Seventh-day Adventists, but the belief system there is fucking wild. This dude was writing at a time period where, not that long ago, like the late 1800s, everyone had a branch of Christianity. Everyone was making a Christianity. Like, literally, they were popping out of the woodworks like crazy because the United States was just real deep in the idea of evangelicalism. Oof. Don't know if that's a word.
That's like Great Awakening period, right?
It's a bit later. The Great Awakening was a bit more in the 1700s. This time period was when we get, like, the rise of Mormonism, Seventh-day Adventists. I believe, like, the modern image of, like, the Baptist split happened not that long ago in the 1860s. A very weird time for Christianity. Maybe I'll do one about an episode on all of the splits where I get to actually use my history degree, because I wrote many long papers on this exact subject. But
yeah,
the Seventh-day Adventist, the founder, did many, like, the world will end on this day, and then was like, whoops, next week, actually, everyone meet here, I swear. Which is great, because that keeps happening.
Yeah, I also think, like, Sadler contends that this book is Christian. He calls it essentially Christian and harmonious with known scientific facts, which is a leap.
I love the term essentially Christian. It sounds like one of those things where, like, you know how orange juice gets to say it's orange juice even if there are no oranges in it? Like, legally, we get to call this Christian.
Right. Well, and I just find that he lived out the latter part of his life kind of not really seeing any of this happen. So he ended up dying in 1969, 93 years of
Nice.
age. But this is right when, that is like right around when Celestial Seasonings was founded, so it almost feels like a metaphorical torch passing on that this like interesting like science fiction Christianity like fanfic is catching on in Colorado. It's racist proponent is dying in the hospital. Like, those are happening at the same time.
When God closes a door.
He reincarnates a racist as a Sleepytime bear with a little nightcap.
Aaron, you did fail to mention that the video mentions that the tea was founded when a dude was hiking in the mountains, grabbed some plants, and made himself a little tea.
Yeah.
And just the phrasing in the video made it sound like the dude was like, fuck it, these'll work. And just got some shit.
Whatever.
I'm sure this will make me sleep.
Yeah, so, you know, he got to see some of it, but by the time of 1955 is when the book was published, you know, he was older and not in great health. I would like to think that he would be very annoyed that it is now in the public domain and that we just all can read it for free and use it in all of our media and it's just all fine.
Which would be better to make him miserable if, like, you know, that it's in the public domain, or that Disney used, like, a name from it, therefore they owned the copyright to it and never would release it, like they did with, like, every other story that existed. Because that would be kind of funny.
The thing about weird old racists and copyright law is that, like...
Go off, King!
Here's the thing. The most famous weird old racist is H.P. Lovecraft because he didn't copyright his stuff. So, like, you'd think that old boy over here would also just be like, no, I love that everybody can freely read my just completely buck wild ideas because that way it's more accessible and I will live on in 1,000 different independent podcasts.
So, boys, shall we dive into a little bit about the Urantia book?
We haven't dove?
If we have to.
Michael, look around, we're already wet. What do you mean, dive?
Well, let's just talk about, like, what it says. So, for example...
I remember it saying a lot of stuff about mixed race people being bad.
Yeah.
Well,
gonna be a bad time for Chaboy, I think.
It's gonna be a wild time, because that's not, like, that is the most odious part. Every line is wild in new and creative ways, and this is why they're like, you need to read it twice.
To get the subtle hints of racism that we clipped in with the normal racism.
So they do believe in a trinity, which
Ugh.
feels very important.
I'm sorry, if you can get rid of anything in Christianity, I would get rid of the Trinity because it's so fucking confusing. My Unitarian roots are coming out. Like, why'd they keep that one?
Well, they upgraded it, or updated it, I should say. God the Supreme, God the Ultimate, and God the Absolute, which just kind of feels like God's drag names.
God the Supreme is my favorite thing from Taco Bell.
I've definitely met a drag queen named Jesus Absolute, like, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, man. It's free. If you're a drag queen out there, public domain.
And they actually have to make this differentiation because Jesus is not one of those three. Jesus is a offspring of the universal Father and eternal Son called a Creator Son.
Which is not part of the Trinity.
Right.
Okay. Good. All right.
Michael, did you accidentally read Dune? I know.
I was gonna say, this is some Forgotten Realms, like, deep lore shit.
I know a lot of us queers TM have been reading it because they got that Chalamet boy in that movie, so a lot of us are looking at this Dune book going, maybe. But did you accidentally read Dune? Did you have the wrong tab open?
I don't think so.
Were they talking about spice?
No, never spice, but then they do put it on a T, so who knows?
Wait, they mentioned tea in this book?
No.
Okay, I was about to say, get the fuck out of here.
Can you imagine?
What a
They
called
were like,
shot.
one day there will be a bear drinking tea that bears our religious message.
No joke, that would be the one thing that would, like, keep me up in the middle of the night, and I'd be like, is God real and racist?
Well, and I love this because the book says, no, obviously Jesus of Nazareth is a creator son who incarnated on earth, and that he is the closest thing to God, but he is not God. But then they say the creator son is a personification, not just the offspring, but also a personification of the Father and the Son. So it's practically God. And I'm like, okay, you just introduced it as this is not God. And now you are saying, but kind of.
Can you imagine the workshop conversations of, like, there's definitely one guy that was like, listen, I don't like the Trinity. Can we kind of, like, upgrade it a little bit? They're like, sure, there's now 18 different versions of God. And he was like, well, can we not, though? Like, I'm cool with all the racism and everything, but I've got to push back on this one a little. That's why it's important to listen to the people in your workshops.
Yeah, but he didn't listen enough to the forum. Listen to the forum comments.
No, don't read comments. Don't take your workshop too seriously. Just straight up.
So God is the Father, right? Like, that much we know. And he's blessed everyone with a thought adjuster. I'm not making this up. We all have a thought adjuster.
Yeah, this is the real Scientology shit that we
Yeah.
were all waiting for.
It's a central teaching of the book, and it's also referred to as the mystery monitor.
Yeah, that's what fucking Scooby and Shaggy drove around in.
The mystery monitor is what I watch porn on. Oh.
So the book says the adjuster is the mark of the divinity, the presence of God. So this is what gives us all of our morality. And they talk about, because of course they're a Christian group, they have to talk about what age that you actually can, be punished for being bad.
Yeah,
And
when your morality adjuster gets the Wi-Fi signal and turns on.
So every person receives
Wait, can we guess?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's really specific.
Okay.
That's what I'm gonna tell you.
Specific, okay.
Alright, let me put... This is old-timey. I'm gonna go 9 and 7 months.
I was gonna say 6.5.
So Aaron, you are pretty close. It is 5 years and 10 months.
Okay, fuck off.
Oh, there we go.
Fuck off. Fuck off.
Yeah, I know a bunch of real amoral 5-year-olds. I believe
I
that.
just went to my girlfriend's family reunion where a bunch of 5-year-olds kept hitting me in the head and stealing my glasses because it was very funny. And I'm not going to disagree. It was pretty comical. It was very comical. However, not very moral.
Well, and there's a reason for that. Because you get that fragment, but they describe a soul, an embryonic spiritual development. So that is your first taste of soul, but you're a baby soul. Not only a baby, you're a fetus.
Oh, so
you
gotta...
have to grow into a soul.
Oh. So when you're...
So let's get this straight. Every human, when they're born, has the embryonic soul of God born into them, and it has to grow and expand and mature with time once it begins receiving the signal at the age 5 years old and 10 months.
Yes, that is correct.
And this is somehow affected by your genetics.
Uh-huh.
So God doesn't put as much of their soul in the not blue people, is what they're saying.
Yes.
Very progressive of you to use non-binary pronouns for this deity.
For this stupid racist deity, yeah.
For this
No.
deity that really hates indigo people.
Listen, I'll stab God through the heart, but I won't misgender them.
That's why we love you.
And yes, that is actually a really concise way to explain what is going on here.
This sucks.
Hey, don't. This is too late in the podcast to say this. Don't listen to this stoned. This is a sober one.
No, listen to this one, Stone.
No, because if you're like,
Is it going to make any more or less sense depending on your mental state?
no, because I'm
No, but you're gonna think it is.
I'm scared some things might click for some people. And I don't want to be. I don't want to like lead people down the wrong route.
You don't want to lead people to backslide.
No, yeah, I want to keep people on the straight and narrow, thinking that like interracial people are just people, you know, like this is Stone Cold sober. Listen,
Well, I agree, but it's not really an existential listen because they don't teach anything about hell or reincarnation. And they say that some of your, like, all of your evil behavior is basically coming from you rejecting the will of God that is the, mystery monitor.
where the porn's playing.
Yes.
Okay, so we have to watch God, the solar being, not Jesus. It's porn.
Yes.
Oh no.
And the ultimate goal, though, is that you have to fuse with your divine fragment.
Okay, get the fuck out of here. Alright, we've had some fun, boys. I know we're probably only like 4 feet deep in this nonsense, but what the fuck?
Some Dragon Ball Z shit. Good.
I got a Voltron god?
You're not fused with your divine fragment?
No, I haven't got the earrings and done the fusion, ha.
No, I tried and it got stuck halfway and I had to see a doctor.
So that is when you ascend, and mortals who reach this stage are called finaliters. Not finalizers, finaliters.
I don't even have a joke for that one.
Okay, AO3 is actually doing humanity a service because it just gives people a creative outlet to put their very bad fantasy bullshit somewhere. At least they don't have to, like, start making goddamn manifestos. You just put it on a Wattpad and not have to create weird racist cults.
Yeah.
This is what happens when we don't make science majors take one class in the humanities. This is what happens. If we didn't make fucking STEM majors learn about, like, the Cold War at least once, this is what they'll make.
So where do you guys think God lives?
The sun.
The center of the Milky Way galaxy in the black hole.
So you're close.
God damn it.
The center of the universe.
Okay.
This is not, because here's the thing, we're just talking about Earth. There are so many other planets with all of these other Adams and Eves that have gone there to practice and play eugenics. So it can't be centered on the Milky Way.
Is this secretly like the villain of Watchmen? Is this just just the Watchmen comic, but like the bad guy? I think that's what this is.
I hate to inform you, Josh, but he already separated the races 30 minutes ago.
Deep cut there, Aaron. Thank you.
That's a good one.
That's the only thing I know about Watchmen.
The TV show's not bad.
The TV show's great. Urantia teaches biological evolution, but also spiritual evolution. And that if we keep practicing eugenics on Earth, that they will somehow make humanity ascend. And
yeah, well, digivolve.
Yeah, they'll connect to their, God particle.
Well, we digivolve our pokey evolution, because, like, do we just get a gun, or do we get, like, bigger?
That's a good question. They don't really answer it. It seems like you just get better. Like, you just become a better person. And I mean both, like, you're nicer and kinder, but also, like, you're more fit and you're healthy and you're just, like, divinely blessed.
So it's EV training, okay.
This has been by far the strangest Autism Speaks article I've ever seen.
Yeah, more or less. So, Jesus in Urantia performed miracles. He taught 12 disciples. He was crucified, rose from the dead, returned to the world.
So the Bible got that part right.
Right. But the crucifixion wasn't actually an atonement. It's the outcome of fears of religious leaders who regarded his teaching as a threat.
So it just happened?
Okay, so yes, so there's no religious significance to the crucifixion at all. It's just like, and then they killed him. Like a lot of radicals get killed. It happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Stop making a big deal out of it.
Whoops.
And
That's
Jesus,
really funny to me, actually.
and Jesus actually has a different name. So Jesus is the human incarnation of Michael of Nebadon, one of more than 700,000 paradise sons of God.
Okay, that's some Warhammer shit right there. You cannot convince me otherwise. This is about to get real weird racism. I can feel
The
it.
great emperor used his own DNA to create 700,000 paradise sons and spread them across the empire.
And then the orcs showed up.
Psychers were too strong, and it messed up the Vorpal tunnels. This fucking sucks.
Aaron, I'm gonna ruin your day even more because
Games Workshop's gonna come in and dox this podcast, and we're not gonna be able to do it anymore.
Yeah, they've released some strict shit, Michael. Be careful.
well, they are going to have nothing on the Catholic slander that's coming your way.
Yes.
The book comes out of its way to say that Jesus was born on Earth through natural means of conception, not a virgin birth.
Get him. Get him.
They're going out of their way to make all the interesting parts of Christianity very boring, and I don't know why they are just claiming that heritage, because it's like, hey, you know all the cool stuff about Christianity? Fuck that.
Aaron, it's like you read my notes. Also, Jesus didn't walk on water.
Well, don't get in.
No miracles!
No, he did bring Lazarus back from the dead. He just didn't walk on water.
Why that one? Why that one?
He also turned water into wine. Very important.
Okay, well, at least they got the most important one, I guess.
Yeah, this book is wild. It misexplains the solar system entirely. It doesn't support the Big Bang Theory. It
Well, no one does after
not,
it got canceled.
It really, really, really underestimates how far the Andromeda Galaxy is. It says that some species have evolved over time, but then some species have evolved suddenly with single mutations.
Whoa, Michael, are you telling me the super racist book got a couple things wrong?
I'm telling you that basically anything scientific in this is wrong.
Okay, just scientific, though. The spiritual message is very... The burning in the bosom is still there.
I mean, for Dr. Sadler and his friends, it seemed to be. It doesn't pass the spell test for me, I gotta say. It also says, it gets solar eclipses wrong, even though they happened in history. In fact, to the point that in 2009, the Urantia Foundation acknowledged an error and revised it about a solar eclipse that happened in the early 1800s.
That's what they decided needed fixing.
Uh-huh.
That was the thing. They were like, you know what, guys? We've done a lot of reflecting. We were wrong about the solar eclipse. Anyway, please do eugenics.
Yeah, and basically all of the many, many, many eugenics lessons here instantly were the thing that people reacted to. Basically, all of the scientific material was accepted at the time, but this is why we don't worship science, right? Science is ever changing and we're learning more and our understanding gets better. And this book is basically just, here's all the wild shit that we believed during this time, and then we're going to sprinkle in some aliens and tie it to God. And by the way, God is racist. And that is the Urantia book.
So we can come up for water, right? I'm not about to detox and now think about this little bear, and then you're going to be like, and they said Santa's real, but he's also racist.
Well, no, it is kind of over because Mo Siegel, who believes in this, and mind you, said, we're just going to ignore who wrote it. We're going to ignore all of that. And the reason I wanted to read past Sadler and read about Urantia and about what they believe in past even just the Adam and Eve aliens and some of the divine stuff, is this is what Mo Siegel read and went, that's mine. I'm signing up for that, and my tea company is going to be very, 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 very inspired by it. But gratefully, Mo Siegel no longer works with Celestial Seasonings. He has retired twice, but the last time seems to have stuck because it was almost 20 years ago. And the reason that it's hard to call this one a cult, I find very interesting. One, because there's really not that many people who, like, actually actively believe in it. And two, there's no religious structure. So there's not, like, the Forum, once it disbanded, that was the only organized religion part of this. Oh. This book has all of the awful parts of organized religion, but none of the community.
This brings me to an interesting question, boys. Was this a fanfic that went too far? What's more embarrassing? You have to accidentally start a religion, or someone finds your manuscript that's not finished? The look on Aaron's face of, like, actual thinking.
Listen, I've got some pretty shitty manuscripts in my Google Docs folder. That's a tough one.
I mean, same. I wrote a book in high school, and if anyone read that, I'd kill me.
I think I would rather have my manuscripts read, I gotta say. At a certain point.
I could see someone finding, like, an old manuscript, and I'd be like, oh, no, an angel made that. An angel made it. It's from God. Read it. Yeah, it explains it.
It just magically appeared in my Microsoft Word document.
Jesus.
Fucking wild. A ghost possessed me, and then an angel made me download it and print it out. So
Jesus came here and did it, but he took a boat. He didn't walk on water.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously. I think it's really funny, too, the Urantia Foundation holds a trademark on the symbol, and I have to drop the symbol in the chat. This is their religious symbol, because they can't do a cross, because the cross obviously doesn't actually matter to Urantia.
Yeah, that's a target. That's target, but blue.
It's literally the target symbol, but blue.
Okay.
Yeah, Walmart just, like, they were trying something new.
And so, yeah, I wouldn't particularly want, if I were you, to read this book. There are roughly 1,200 official members of this church, mostly concentrated in the West, particularly the Sun Belt. But again, there's no real, like, strict religious situation. They also have made the decision to not significantly market the book, which I think between the alien racism, the history of eugenics, all racism. Of the other shit, yeah, I feel like maybe that was a good idea. If you're trying to market a religion, you might not want to, I don't know, put all of that stuff at the forefront.
Michael, I'm so mad that you ruined my 5th favorite cartoon bear.
Your favorite?
My 5th favorite. In order.
What are your 4 most favorite?
Yeah, in order
it
goes Baloo, of course, Jungle Book, classic. And then it's the bears that love to wipe their ass. I just love this guy so much.
The Charmin
Bears.
The Charmin Bears.
Okay.
And then I gotta go Craig.
Acceptable.
I love Craig. Craig's awesome.
Craig, who records our backups. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, and then Winnie, I like him. He's cute. Sometimes he's a little annoying.
Happy birthday, Winnie.
Yeah, happy birthday, Winnie. And then, of course, do you guys see that when England gave America the bear that Winnie the Pooh is based off of, and then later they're like, hey, can we get that back? And America went, no.
That's really funny.
That sounds about right.
Which is what
Fuck
the
'em.
British deserve.
Yes.
Give your artifacts back, motherfuckers. And then, of course, my 5th favorite was that Sleepytime bear, who's now getting demoted to, like, 6. He's like 28th. He's below the Snuggle Bear, and the Snuggle Bear gives me nightmares.
Snuggle Bear is pretty creepy.
Let's just talk about bears now.
There, that's kind of Urantia. Like, it exists, but it's not really super popular. But it's really, 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 really strange. It has a deep, unsettling history, and it thinks that the color of alien skin dictate their superpowers and which ones should be able to reproduce. And you just can't really untie it.
I do highly recommend the video that Michael provided for watching this. The channel, really well made, very interesting video. I do not recommend doing any extra research. It will make you upset. It will make Google think that you're a bad person, and is not good.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Google is convinced I'm a Scientologist now.
I'm scared if we mention Scientology too many times, they're going to come after us.
I mean, Tom Cruise is literally my size. I've never felt better about my chances in a fight.
He's crazy, Michael. He breaks his leg just for fun.
I'm crazy too. Let's go.
I can't wait for
Tom Cruise, if you're listening, let's go.
the celebrity boxing match. My brother versus Tom Cruise.
Cannot wait.
So, is this raiding time, or are we at the end of this deep dive?
Yeah, this is the end of the deep dive. That's what I have for you. I've got a lot about Urantia, a lot about God, a lot about, Jesus lore and ascending, bonding with your God particle.
Michael, how do you get... before we get into the rating, how do you get this out of your system once you're done?
Oh, it's out. What do you mean?
Okay, good, because, some of the stuff we've watched and talk about has stuck with me for weeks later, and that's just not a good time.
No attachment whatsoever. Once it's out, it's out. It is no longer mine.
Well, I'm just going to jump right into my rating if you boys are ready.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give this one...
What are we rating the Illuminati video, or are we rating Urantia in
That
general?
will not change my answer.
Open to interpretation.
I'm rating the podcast, as I always do. I'm giving this one Adeptus Mechanicus. Replace your body parts with machinery.
Great. I'm giving Urantia the first Station of the Cross. Jesus is condemned to death. Because I think we should just put this whole cult down.
I'm going to give 2 separate ratings because I have to. For Urantia, I'm going to give them 1 out of 5 successful copyright lawsuits because I guess you got to keep the circles. And then on circles, I'm going to give Illuminati's video 5 out of 5 concentric circles because you had me thinking about space Jesus and wild Scientology cults that are mixed with all sorts of batshit crazy events from our country's history. So thank you.
Well, boys, that was a weird one.
It certainly was. Well, listeners, if you want to listen to us talk about more wild, just berserk stuff that is bouncing around inside our skulls, where can people find us for those thoughts on the internet?
I am at Green History on Twitter, where I will be talking about how bad the Nationals are at baseball this year.
I'm at Michael's Diamonds on Twitter. You will not find me ever talking about baseball ever there, which is the biggest endorsement of my Twitter feed I've ever made.
You can find me on Twitter at AaronSXL, where I write and post essays and complain about healthcare generally. You can also listen to the other podcasts I do at Mortified Pod. Me and Layla just put up an episode about Pokemon, the third movie, the one with Entei and the Unknown.
Nice.
It actually was a very fun one. So if you liked that bit where me and Josh just talked about Pokemon for a bit in the podcast, check that out. Well, listeners, if talking about this absurd eugenics cult that makes you feel morally complicated about drinking your favorite tea brought tears to your eyes, don't worry, and just remember that it is okay to cry, because even Jesus wept. We'll see you all next time.